Mongoose Magic Moments, the Tsebokolodi Yellow Mongoose group. Hello, conservation friends. Streaming live from the Tsebokolodi Yellow Mongoose group here in the Meerkat Magic Valley Reserve of the Meerkat Magic Conservation Project. This is the current breeding female who was born in November 2018. Her name is Giabonga, which means thank you in Zulu. And she's one of a pair of twins. It's very unusual for yellow mongooses to have many litters in a year, in my experience. Yellow mongoose is Cynictis penicillata. It has the white tip to the tail and this beautiful yellowy orange to its coat. So it usually blends in very, very well with the background surroundings. Currently, after a long day out foraging, started off at temperature around 5 degrees centigrade. It was very cold this morning with frost on the ground yesterday morning. Gale force winds of 80 to 120 kilometers an hour have been passing through the Western Cape of South Africa. And here we are in the Meerkat Magic Valley Reserve, and there's not a breath of wind today. So it's quite incredible how quickly the weather patterns can change, and it affects the wildlife completely as well. Meerkats and the yellow mongoose that live here on the reserve, of course, can escape these extreme temperature and windstorm variations because they simply go beneath the ground into their beautiful burrow systems, which can be 10 degrees warmer in the summer or winter, or cooler, depending on what's going on outside. Just wanted to say hello, sending a wave there to some of our observers. Might be watching from Japan, the Philippines, Russia, America, all over the place. I thought I'd do a few live streams for a change. This is actually sitting at the burrow system right now. I'm within 2 meters of this wild female. The group I'm studying now, I've been watching since 2008 on the reserve. So many generations have been born into this group. Currently, the dominant female from which the group gets its name, Tsebokolodi, is in fact also at the burrow, and so is the breeding male, Sawubona. Tsebokolodi is actually Tswana for millipede, which is an invertebrate, segmented vertebrate, which meerkats and mongooses eat here. And Sawubona is the Zulu word for hello. So Sawubona and Giabonga, the litter mates. The 2 babies that were born over May this year are currently below the ground. So the group is getting ready to go to sleep. That's what all the grooming is. Bit of auto-grooming, just making sure there are no ticks or fleas at the end of the day. It's also a sign of good condition. Meerkats do it too. They'll be doing it right now, in fact, at different burrows. They spend a lot of time in the late day just grooming and doing social affirmations. Whereas in the morning, not much time is spent doing that, because it's usually time to get up and get food while the going is good. And she's starting to nod off, closing her eyes. She's very familiar with my voice and hand gestures and other movements. I have to be very careful because although it may seem like this animal is completely relaxed, it's because of tolerance over many, many years. If I had to move, immediately their chin is drawn to me. But there are various codes, hand gestures, and so on that they recognize. So within a moment, I can reassure them, look, it's just me. And that's the difference between taming an animal, which is very, very easy to do, and keeping a wild animal wild, but has selective tolerance to certain research observers. And that takes many years, because you have to understand that if you end up taming animals, you're actually setting them up for disaster, because predators will come along, make a scraping sound, or crunch a twig, or make sounds that the animals should react to for their own protection. And if humans have got them used to those sounds, they'll simply ignore those sounds and end up getting caught. And unfortunately, that has happened with observers in different areas working with different animals. So it's a very important skill to learn, not to tame the wild animals you work with. They simply treat me as if I'm an object. They just got so used to seeing me. They don't get anything from me. They don't get fed. They don't get handled. This is an observation-only research project, so there are no radio transmitters, no artificial markings or anything like that. It's long-term demographics, population dynamics, recording the natural cycles of natality and mortality. It's a great privilege to have a snapshot window like this, because this is in fact a wildlife documentary. It's unedited right now. Anything can happen. I'm simply seated at this burrow system. Again, I'll show you. Here I am. And she blends very well into this area. I'll just have a little zoom around. It's just going on before sunset here in the Western Cape of South Africa, looking way off towards the Great Black Mountain Range to the north, which will be covered in snow in the next few months. I have in fact put some stakes around this burrow, cordoned it off from any of the antelope in the area so that they don't trample the burrow. I'm just going to get back to here. It's resting the camera on my knee. There's a great deal of confusion that people often have between meerkats, the suricate, and mongooses. Even the name mongooses for plural is often confusing. People often want to say mongoose and mongai, but it's in fact mongooses. 36 species of mongooses currently known. The opinions on that vary. And many people just include the meerkats and say they're sociable mongooses. But meerkats are very different to mongooses in many ways. I have been studying meerkats professionally in the wild since 1993. And they are much more dog-like. Mongooses tend to be much more cat-like. And just a quick example here. One of the big differences between meerkats and mongooses, and that's all the species of mongooses, meerkats have a fleshy valve inside their ear that can expand to seal off the ear canal completely, the external bullae. Mongooses do not have this valve. I mean, that is a huge difference right there between them. And that's not even going into all the other differences. I'll mention a few. Meerkats have 4 long nails on the front feet and 4 short nails on the back feet. The yellow mongoose right here has 5 short nails on the front feet and 4 short nails on the back feet. The banded mongoose, which is a highly sociable or gregarious mongoose, which I've worked with in Uganda, living in groups of 40 to 60, they have 5 nails on the front feet and 5 nails on the back feet. Also, the yellow mongoose has very fine, paper-like ears. They're very thin with fine hair covering them, almost like fur. The underside of the body is covered in fur like a cat, whereas the meerkat has very coarse, dog-like hair and almost no hair covering their stomach areas. So they can cool down very quickly and, of course, also heat up very quickly. All right, she's moving off. Let's see where she's going. This acacia karoo thorn tree is a naturally occurring thorn tree here. It's massive thorns, 10 centimeters or more. It's a great defense mechanism that the mongooses use here at this burrow. All right, meerkat has a black tip to the tail. Yellow mongoose has a white tip to the tail. Yellow mongoose has a horizontally slitted pupil. A cat has a vertically slitted pupil, and a meerkat has a round pupil. Again, different light conditions. Yellow mongooses can often be active at dawn and dusk, so they're crepuscular. During the day, like now, diurnal, and they can be nocturnal. So they're highly variable. All right, she's just picked up on something there, possibly some termites or ant pupa. The diet is fairly similar to meerkats, and again, a big difference between the meerkats and the mongooses. Meerkats do not have carnassial or cutting teeth. That's why often in captivity, meerkats get very overweight because they cannot properly digest the meat food they are given. They don't have the proper carnassial teeth as the yellow mongoose has here. Just another little difference there. The way she's sitting right now as well is almost using her tail like a convenient rug, whereas meerkats don't do that with their tails because they don't have thick, fluffy tails like the yellow mongoose has. The yellow mongoose can also puff out its tail to many times its size, and they'll do this when alarmed. And the meerkats puff up their tail. It has different meanings depending on how they hold it against their body. When they bend it over their backs, arch it up, that's usually when they've been very aggressive. They've come across a snake or possibly another meerkat group or intruder in the area. Yellow mongooses will put their tails up vertically and they will not bend them backwards over their backs to indicate a threat. Even the birds here are used to seeing me around here. And it's important to understand that every animal in the entire ecosystem here acts as part of the neighborhood watch. And the neighborhood watch means in the distance, that sound right now can trigger an alarm. Let's see what happens. Got various water birds flying past, but they are not seen to be a threat. But she's stopped and she's alert. That's just my reassurance letting her know it's just me, not a threat. It's especially important to understand that hand gestures that I use, and I've used with meerkats and various species of wildlife that I observe, are excellent when you want to be completely quiet. If any animals that you know look at you, you can simply reassure them with a hand gesture, which I'll demonstrate. And she's looking at me now, and within a moment she'll look away. This can be measured between individuals. There we go. Animals who I start working with, of course, have no idea what that is, and they'll see it as a threat gesture if you're not careful. That's why it's important to understand their behaviors. It's neuro-linguistic programming. In psychology, it's known as NLP, interspecies communication. Basic Pavlov's idea, except there's no reward system here. Because these animals have no reason to tolerate my presence except that I have never disturbed them over many, many years. And I can lose this trust very quickly if I'm not careful. Tsugumi, good to see you there. I hope you're well. I hope everyone who's watching and has watched and may watch is safe, and that your family and friends are staying safe. Currently, South Africa is still in lockdown stage 4. So out here on the reserve, lockdown doesn't make any difference because we're always in lockdown. And of course, the animals that I'm studying don't leave the reserve. So there's no reason for me to leave here either. It's getting much cooler now that the sun is setting. Just going to have a little zoom away from the burrow now. This is actually an ant bear burrow right here. Ant bear, Arichteropidae, Arichteropus afer, also known as the aardvark. And of course the porcupine also comes to use this burrow system here. Largest rodent here, Hystrix africae australis. Stekelvark, Eystervark, Stachelschwein, just a few different names for them. So, of course, when they arrive, they are not active at the same time, usually, as the meerkats and mongoose, who also use this burrow system. It's one of the reasons why I like to call this massive burrow, which has over 100 plus entrances and exit extending way back that way, all along this ridge. It's a wildlife hotel. Just like any hotel, there are often many inhabitants, but they're not sharing the same rooms. So although meerkats and yellow mongoose live here, and even small grey mongoose, also known as Cape Grey, and of course the ant bear and the porcupine, can all use this, they're not using the same rooms or chambers. So there's no direct competition. And again, the porcupine is a herbivore, so it's not even eating the insects and smaller vertebrates that the yellow mongoose and the meerkats tend to eat. And the ant bear tends to move around and eat hundreds of thousands of termites and ants a night. So in fact, when it's digging them up, there's lots of food left over for the mongooses and meerkats, who may visit that area the next day, for example. Right, the other two mongooses have already gone to sleep, and I don't see the babies, so we're just waiting to see if she's going to head off below ground soon. And lovely bit of auto grooming there. One of the reasons meerkats and mongooses move around from burrow to burrow is to make sure that parasite loads like ticks and fleas don't increase in great numbers. And with meerkats breeding, they may have to stay at a burrow for a few weeks, even a month or more, and that's when parasite loads get very high. Also, internal parasites, nematodes, platyhelminthes, and so on, can increase. Predators can detect a scent that builds up in an area for a long time, so it in fact becomes very dangerous to stay in one area for too long. And also food reserves in the area will become depleted, and the inhabitants will have to move further and further away from the burrow, which means they have to travel further every day to get back to the burrow and find food, etc. So they tend to have many different burrows, quite often a few kilometers apart, with escape tunnels, which we call bolt holes, between them, which can be a few hundred meters apart in pretty much every direction. All right, she's heading off to sleep soon. Just see what she's doing here, going past some of my observation chairs, which I've put here. Just checking, looking back at me briefly. It gets very dangerous to get away from the burrow system by yourself, especially if you're a meerkat. That generally does not happen. So she's back at the burrow, where it's much safer to be. And as I've mentioned, this burrow has many different entrances and exits, but the other two mongooses have already gone below into this chamber, and they've scent marked it. They've gone below, checked that there are no snakes in the burrow system, so they know it's safe to go into. So when she's ready, she'll also go into the burrow. I think the group has eaten very well today because of the lots of grooming I've seen them doing. So I don't think they're going to be heading out again later, but they may come out. As I've mentioned before, they can be nocturnal as well. I have seen yellow mongooses active at 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's quite possible they are highly adaptable as a species. Sometimes they live in small family units of only 2 to 6. Other times 13, 14 plus, almost like meerkat groups. And there are many factors that affect this. Usually it's habitat suitability, burrow availability, food availability, predator density, etc. Those are Hardidar ibis. It's a water bird in this area. That's what that loud sound is in the background. Ostricha haggardash. And they're all heading off to roost in the reserve river system. It's one of the reasons I call it meerkat magic and mongoose magic. These moments, just snapshots in time. It's like looking through a window into very secretive lives. When I first started working with the yellow mongooses in this group, I was hundreds of meters away using telescopes, and that was as close as I could get. For many, many months, I couldn't move. Insects would bite me. I would get sunburnt. And if I even moved slightly when the mongooses were looking at me, and the same is true with the meerkats, they would simply dive below ground or run off, and that would be the end of my observation. And every single animal has a tolerance level to an observer. You cannot simply decide to walk out there and they're just going to accept your presence. They are naturally wary of humans for good reason. This is an area in a farming community, so animals that are living here have seen people, and people usually do not see them, so they move around and disturb the animals. The animals learn to be intolerant of observers. So when I arrive as a research biologist, they treat me the same way. And to get them to differentiate between me as a non-threat is what takes many, many years. And I introduce various codes and sounds. Even the sound of my voice now is something they're very familiar with. I wear the same shoes to the specific group, and they've scent marked these shoes so they recognize them. I don't wear these shoes to any other groups because they would see it as an intruder scent and basically attack the shoe. So I have to be very careful about that as well. There are many different codes, many different sounds that they recognize. I've recorded over 36 different sounds that meerkats make. It is like a language. I am documenting the yellow mongoose sounds. They generally are not as vocal as the meerkats, but I've already identified a handful of sounds that are very, very specific, so I can tell what they're basically saying. It's like deciphering a code. It's fascinating. Now, right now, out of a planet of 7 billion plus people, I'm probably the only person, and I say this quite certainly, who is this close to wild yellow mongoose. And this is one of the reasons why I find this so exhilarating, because you never know what you might see when you're studying wildlife. And this is not just looking from a vehicle, being the outsider looking in, as I like to say. You're actually amongst the wild animals, but they treat you like an object. And because of that, other animals who would usually be scared of an observer will take their cues from the animals that know the observer very well. So basically, when the yellow mongoose is turning its back to me like it's doing now, any of the animals, including the birds here, even certain insects, will take their cues from who they know in the neighborhood watch. So if the meerkat is relaxed, not making alarms, antelope in the area will relax. Mongooses will relax. Mongooses who are alarming will alarm the meerkats and the birds, etc., etc. So when somebody walks into an area and thinks they haven't been seen, they are absolutely wrong. The entire neighborhood is aware of their presence. There's an insect here, I call this cicadas neighborhood watch, and they occur around the world. But when that insect starts making a loud buzzing sound when it gets very hot, and then suddenly stops, everybody in the area, meerkats, mongooses, birds, all become very alert because they know that insect has stopped making its call because something has disturbed it. Usually a person has come into the area or predator. So they pick up on these, and over a great deal of time through associative learning, they learn that those sounds or lack of sounds can be major warnings. That's why I like to say the loudest call of all is the silent call. Now, of course, my sounds have also become something that this neighborhood is used to hearing. Various birds and other mammals here accept it as a non-threat. All right, that's a big stretch. Difficult to see now. Let's See if I can get the camera a bit lower here. Just the white tip to her tail is visible as she moves through the vegetation to a different part of the burrow. I have to be especially careful now as visibility starts to get poor, as the light conditions change. All right, there she's moving off to a different part of the burrow. I don't want to distract them and move around. I'm going to stand up slowly now. Ah, that's nice to stretch. For anyone who's joined me for this live stream, thank you, and I hope you stay safe. She's just gone below into the burrow now. And she's come up again. Just moving along slowly here. Have a little scan around. Beautiful Great Black Mountain Range in the distance there. Quite commonly covered in snow over the winter months. We haven't had any snow yet, but it's definitely getting cold enough now. Not even one cloud in the sky today. Amazing. And not a breath of wind. Oh, she's gone back to where those little snacks were. I think there must be a few termites coming up there. And the termites are related to cockroaches. They are not, in fact, ants, as some people believe. And ants will, in fact, attack termites. So termites are very careful about when they're active. And, of course, they can get sunburned as well, so they don't tend to come out when it's very hot. So now's a great time for them to come out and collect their food, which consists of plant material. They basically take that below, and then all that delicious plant material, cellulose, converted into food for them. That white tip to the tail is just very, very easy to distinguish in this vegetation. She's busy running around checking the burrows. Another difference between the yellow mongoose and the meerkats. Meerkats don't have middens or latrines, communal toilets usually. They will mark their territory all over the place, and on range overlaps, they generally will mark it in the same area. However, the yellow mongooses will usually have a midden or latrine at a sleeping burrow, which they'll use again and again and again on a daily basis if they stay in one area for a while. I'm just going to go a bit closer now. She's chosen a burrow system for the night. And that's that. Well, it was lovely to see her active. Ah, she's popped up again. So well camouflaged now, even against this green vegetation. This vegetation can grow up to over 1 meter high in places. In the summer months, it goes yellowy brown, and then these animals become pretty much invisible. And that's why the white tip to the tail is used very effectively to communicate to the rest of the group where they are, along with sounds. Again, the meerkats use their black tip to the tail, and when they lift it up, the Kalahari subspecies of meerkats has a yellow patch beneath the tail, whereas the subspecies that occurs here in the Little Karoo, the Meerkat Magic Valley, has orange beneath its tail. It's a much darker variation of the meerkat.